This is Big Tasty Sports. Back with another week of NFL Futures. This is the after Week 8 edition, even though Week 8 is not officially over because we still have the Bengals and the Browns to play tonight. The Bengals and the Browns do not factor in big ways to any of the bets that I'm going to share today, so not going to wait on that game to play out. I was wrong about how the Monday night game would play out last week. Who knows? Maybe I'll be wrong again this week, as I would expect Cincinnati to be able to go in there and get a win against the Browns. But we will find out, and that's not what this video or podcast is for. First thing I want to do is recap movement on the futures bets that I shared last week. What's happened to those in the last week? As I've said, I think I'm up to 40 plus futures bets, so I'm certainly not going to recap all of those every week. But let's go through the ones from last week. Let's actually start with the one that moved the opposite direction of what I would hope, and that was Washington under 6.5 wins plus 135 is what I took that at last week. Obviously, pulling off the victory against the Colts is what moved the line. Had they lost that game, I imagine that it would have stayed the same or maybe even moved my direction a little bit. But that has actually moved to 7.5 now, and I am kind of considering adding more, though I may just leave well enough alone with what I have. The under 7.5 is minus 105, so it is plus 135 at the 6.5 and minus 105 at the 7.5. But still, obviously, you would pay that price to get a under of another game. So that one did move against me. For the other four, though, of the 5 bets I made have moved in my direction. We'll start with the ones that have moved the least and move to the ones that have moved the most. I did a parlay of division winners, Buffalo, Kansas City, Minnesota, Philadelphia, and got that at plus 112. The best I was able to find that at for now was minus 103. So not a massive movement, but hey, from plus money to not plus money. The next one up was Atlanta to win the division. And I guess you could debate which of these are the biggest. All the other three, I think, are all fairly significant moves. I got that at plus 400, and it is now at plus 250 after they took control of the division by outlasting Carolina in a really exciting but kind of crappy game. So that one has moved. Then Tennessee to win the division. This actually may be the biggest move. I got it at minus 110 last week. It is now minus 275 up to minus 300 in some places, but I'll always try to give you the best line that's still available, which from what I see is minus 275. And then the last one was San Francisco over 9.5 wins. Started a little slow, but went in and beat down the Rams. I got that at plus 100. It is now minus 160 for the over 9.5. So pretty significant move there as well. Pretty happy overall. I know that those can change from week to week, so I'm certainly not here pretending that all of those will end up moving my direction across the course of the whole season. But that's where they're at now. And in some ways, it's a little bit, I feel like it's a little bit of a win to jump on. This is what I'm trying to do, is jump on things before they move too far the other direction. And at least in 4 out of the 5 from the last week, that was the case. So if you enjoy futures bets, hopefully we can do the same thing again. I'm going to go through my projections for NFC, AFC, and then get to, I believe I have 4 bets at the end, and then 4 or 5 others that I'm considering but have not bet so far. Maybe that's a homage to Lou Betya. If you don't follow him, he likes to do props to consider and then maybe bet. So that's kind of what I wrap up with at the end. All right, with that said, let's jump in to the projections. Many of these have not moved much. If you are seeing this for the first time, if you are on the podcast, I'll describe it. Obviously, you can't see the slides that are up on YouTube, but I have each division in order with my projections from first to fourth. The record, and then in parentheses, I have 2 numbers, which is what I have as the ceiling, or the floor and the ceiling for the win total for that team. And then this week, I also added in green or red numbers, +1. There, I think there's even a -2 on one of these teams in terms of how my projection has changed from last week to this week. You'll see that, half or better of these haven't changed. Some of them just changed. Like, let me give you Washington as an example. So they're +1 this week. I have them projected for 5-12. Well, the reason that that's +1 is because I had the game against Indy as a toss-up. So I had that as a maybe win, not as a win. Well, now it's a win. And so that bumped up their projection just a little bit. I didn't really change much of anything else that I had for Washington looking forward at the schedule, though they've been a little bit better. But I don't think beating Sam Ehlinger at the last minute with a Colts team that hasn't been very good is too big of a deal. So I still have in the East Philly, Dallas, Giants, and then Washington. I do have those top 3 teams in the East pretty high. And as you'll see, all of them in the playoffs. I have my playoff projections on the left. I did bump Minnesota up some. Maybe it's because I'm a Vikings fan. Also, I don't think that they're an incredibly solid team still, but they're in a division that isn't very good. Detroit gets worse and worse. I have them dropping down another game. Move Green Bay up a game, but still only have Green Bay at 9-8. So I still feel pretty good about Minnesota winning that division. The South is kind of a mess. I have Tampa Bay and Atlanta at 9-8, so in a tie there. And then New Orleans at 7-10, sort of still in it. If you look at the floor and ceiling projections, my ceiling on Atlanta is actually the highest of those 3 teams. And then in the West, I have San Francisco, Seattle, LA, Arizona. The biggest change there was Seattle and LA flip-flopped in my projections. And now Seattle is second, moving up to 10-7 as a projected record, and the Rams down to 8-9. For the playoffs, really the only change there is I have Atlanta moved out of the playoffs and Seattle moved in, but really Seattle, Atlanta, Green Bay, possibly the Giants, though I think the Giants will get enough clearance to just be in, vying for that number 7 spot in the playoffs. Seattle's been good, so you will see that is one of the smaller bets this week, has to do with the Seahawks. Moving on to the AFC. Here again, probably the biggest change here is in the AFC East, where it's funny because New England just beat the Jets, and so you could say, Tasty, what are you smoking? Moving New England down 2 games and now having the Jets projected above them in the division at 8-9 and New England at 7-10. Here's the reality. I just don't like what I see from New England at all. I think things have to go pretty perfectly for them to win games. I don't love the Jets either, and losing Breece Hall is a big deal. But I think I prefer their defense to New England's defense, and then maybe they can figure out a way to manage Zach Wilson where he's not as much of a disaster on offense. So I don't love either of those 2 teams, but that was the biggest change in my projections in the AFC. Also in the South, kind of a mess. I have Tennessee winning that division at 9-8, and then next best for me is Indianapolis at 5-11-1. Jacksonville 5-12, Houston 2-14-1. I mean, I love Tennessee to win this division at this point. I just think they're the only team that's marginally decent. And I didn't bet it, and I actually don't think I have this on the possible bets either, but I will just tell you that Tennessee, you can find minus 275. That's a lot of juice to pay. Maybe there's something else that you could parlay that with. I was playing around with a Tennessee parlay, but did not pull the trigger on that to this point. But man, I have them clear of the next best team by 4 games. It's quite a bit. And I have their floor at 8. The next best ceiling is Jacksonville at 7. So I really like Tennessee to win that division. Certainly hope Tannehill's back, but it was an illness, so I would think he should be back. And then in the West, really only change there is I think I had the Chargers and the Raiders tied, and now I have the Chargers 1 game over the Raiders. Obviously, just that loss that they had. So for the playoffs there, Buffalo, Kansas City, Baltimore, Tennessee, Miami, Cincinnati, and then number 7, I have TBD vying for that spot. New England, the Jets, the Chargers, and the Raiders. Last week I said I liked the Raiders for that spot. It's hard to like them a lot after what we saw from them in New Orleans. But I still think I like the Chargers and the Raiders both better than the Patriots and the Jets. Maybe their division's a little harder, though both of those divisions are challenging. So we'll see where it ends up, but I like one of those 2 teams from the West to be able to pull through, probably just at 9-8, maybe 10-7, and sneak into the playoffs with the 7 seed. Those are where I have the division standing. Let's jump into the bets. This is the good part. 3 win total bets this week. This is my highest volume. First up, I have Kansas City over 12.5 wins at plus 118. I got this on Barstool, and I went 4 units on this. This is one of the bets that I was considering last week and didn't make. And the number is actually a little bit better now than when I was looking at it last week. I think it was only plus 105. So I get a little bit more at the plus 118. I just had to pull the trigger on this. First thing is the market. The next best price you can get is plus 110. So I'm getting 8 points better than that. I don't think that indicates that the market is really out of whack with this price, like I think it is with one other bet that I'm going to talk about today. But it is a decent price for this. I have Kansas City's win floor at 13, and I have their ceiling at 15. So even my floor wins this bet. Like I've said, my floor does not guarantee they're going to get that many wins, but I think Kansas City, again, is one of those top 3 teams in the NFL. I think they should be favored in every game that they play from here on out for the rest of the season. And so they can stumble here and there, but I can have them lose. I have them projected for 14 wins. So I can have them lose one more than I think they will and still win this bet. At plus money, I think that's a phenomenal bet, which is why I went that big on it. And again, if you haven't been following me, I do go a little bigger on some futures bets than I do on the week-to-week stuff. But this is my biggest bet of the week that I'm adding is the 4 units on Kansas City over 12.5 at plus 118. I would play that all the way down to plus 100. Even if you found it there, I still think that that's pretty good value. Second win total bet is the Seattle Seahawks over 8.5 wins. The best price I could find on that was minus 120. I only bet this one to win 1 unit. So I said last week my units right now are $50. So I bet 60 on this to win 50. The next best price I could find on this was minus 130. My projection for Seattle is 10-7 now. So again, I have a game and a half of clearance, but the biggest thing for me has to do with the win total floor that I've established for them again, which is 9 wins. So if I had more variance on this total and my floor was at, say, 7, I'd be much less likely to put a bet in here. And even now, Seattle's still in that mid tier to me where I think they'll have a lot of games that are sort of toss ups. And so while my floor is at 9, I feel less confident than I do with Kansas City, which is why I only bet to win 1 unit. And then my third win total bet is Denver under 6.5 wins at plus 125. My projection for Denver is 5-12. So again, they could win one more game than what I'm projecting them for, and I'm getting plus money. I have their floor at 3 and their ceiling at 7. So the ceiling is over the 6.5, but just by that half of a game. So for me, the plus money is big here. If this was minus 110, I would likely not be betting it. But because it's plus 125, I like the value here. This price actually got a little bit better on the heels of them beating a bad Jacksonville team. I don't think beating Jacksonville right now says too much. I certainly think Denver could be in games and beat bad teams. But if you look ahead at their schedule, they have a lot more games that are tough than they do that are easy. And so I expect them to continue to lose and probably end up with more like 5 wins. But hey, let's get 6 or less and we'll cash that win total. So those are my 3 win total bets that I've added there. I have one division winner bet that I added, and that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers plus 100 for 2 units. A few things for me on this one that I considered. Oh, and this plus 100 is at Barstool, by the way. The next best price on this is minus 130. That is a significant difference, and there are multiple books that are minus 130 or worse. So to me, the plus 100 is an improperly priced price. That's a stupid way to say it, but I think you get what I'm saying. This isn't in alignment with the rest of the market, so I'm getting a better price than what the market says this is worth. I don't make bets solely on that, but when I find these spots, it absolutely is a factor that moves me to actually bet something. Secondly, this number has been minus 2, I think 240, 250 or worse the whole year. I understand. I mean, last night I talked about with D and with Yanni. I don't love this team. I am not confident that they're going to win this division. I'm not confident that they're going to make the playoffs, but they are still the team with the most talent that has the potential to turn things around. So I'm not high on them, but this is by far the best price we've had on them. And if they win 1 or 2 in a row, we're not ever going to see this price again, most likely. And so I think now is the time to buy low if you want to get in on Tampa Bay to win the division at all. I do also have plus money on Atlanta and New Orleans already. So now I'm going to have plus money on all three of those teams. One of them's going to win the division. I think I would take this bet if I had nothing on anyone. So I will say that. But for me, it's a little bit of a hedge, I guess, in that it's a really good price. Tampa Bay could still win this division. And now I'd have to go back and look. I think there's one of the teams where if they win the division, I think it might be New Orleans. I still would lose a tiny bit of money, but if Atlanta or Tampa Bay wins it, I'm going to win something. So there's a little bit of that for me in terms of rounding out the portfolio with a good price on Tampa, maybe taking away a little bit of my risk. I have Tampa Bay and Atlanta both projected for 9 and 8 right now, New Orleans for 7 and 10. So I think this division could come down to the end, but I'm happy to have plus money on the team that's most talented out of the three that will be in the running. So that is my fourth bet for the week, and that is all that I have actually placed. 4 other things that I am considering. Dallas over 11.5 wins, minus 120. I have them projected for 12, but a ceiling up to 14. So I think that that's not bad. The Giants over 11.5 or over 10.5 wins at plus 140. For me, this is that big plus number. I have the Giants projected to be 11-6 with a floor of 10 and a ceiling of 12. And so at plus 140, I think that that's not a bad idea. Indianapolis under 6.5 wins. I have them projected for 5 at this point, but a floor of 4. So again, at plus money, and I have a game of clearance. I think that is not a bad idea. And then I'm also thinking about starting to look at AFC and NFC champions. In the NFC, I think it will be Philadelphia, San Francisco, Dallas, maybe Minnesota, though I think Minnesota is the least complete team out of those 4. San Francisco, to me, is tied for most complete if everyone is healthy, which is a big caveat with Philadelphia. To get plus 550 on that team is not a bad price. I'm not sure that I'll add this. I got to think about it more if I want to get involved in that market. But of all the conference champion bets, this is the one that I think holds the most value at the moment. All right, those are the futures bets for this week. If you want to tail me, welcome on board. If you want to fade me, screw you. Just kidding. If you want to fade me, that's great. I don't mind. Would love to hear any comments. Let me know what you're thinking about futures. Would enjoy some conversation. As always, please do like, subscribe so you will get any content that's coming out. And if you're listening to the podcast, please do rate and review. I would be forever grateful. Have a great day. I'll talk to you later.